Recently, I'm not the only one that's been suffering from this strange new illness of Porsche restomod fatigue. Anyone can contract it when you're exposed to too many priceless reimaginings of the 911. But the doctors say it's not serious and can be treated by exposure to a lovely restored classic that's not rear-engined and air-cooled from Stuttgart. So my medicine is an unreliable, baggy old 70s British GT car. No, not the Jaguar XJS. Meet the TWR Supercat. Oh yes, I'm feeling better already.
If you really know your Jags, you'll recognise the letters TWR as in Tom Walkinshaw Racing, the firm that steered Jaguar to victory at Le Mans in the late 1980s with stunning V12 prototypes, and then engineered the all-time fastest Jag supercar in the 90s, the XJ220. It also had a hand in the legendary Volvo 850 touring car and the balmy Renault Clio V6. That company got wound up over 20 years ago, but there's now a new outfit with the same name founded by the late Tom's son Fergus Walkinshaw, aiming to hark back to TWR's touring car successes with the original XJS by going absolutely bananas with 88 examples of this thing.
And given that Jaguar isn't actually building any cars at the moment, it's probably a good idea for somebody to remind the world that that brand exists. And most people, of course, would do that with an E-Type, but there's already the likes of Eagle doing exquisite work on those. So I think an XJS is actually a much more interesting choice, because unlike so many of the restomod choices out there, well, it's not a car that was ever revered or eulogized. In fact, it was always kind of flawed. It was uglier than the E-Type that it replaced. It was never as good to drive as its rivals, and Jaguar was so broke that it left it on sale for 20 years. If ever there was a British sports car that was ripe for a 21st century reinvention, well, there's loads, to be honest. In fact, pretty much all of them. But the XJS is right up there.
So let's speak to the people behind the Supercat to find out what it's all about first, and then in a moment we're going to drive the prototype on track. Here to talk us through the oily bits is Fergus Walkinshaw, son of Tom and the Supercat's lead engineer.
Wow, Fergus, so the heart of the beast, can you just talk a little bit about where you even sourced this engine from?
Yeah, so the original engine is taken out of the donor cars, so it's the Jag V12. From there we tear it all down in-house, increase the bore to bring it out to a 5.6 litre. It's dry sumped. Then we do a load of work on the cylinder head, remachine the combustion chamber and the ports, new valve train, billet cams, double valve springs, titanium retainers. Then of course the supercharger gets added, a charge cooling system. So yeah, that gives us a power figure over 650 horsepower, a red line of 7,750 RPM and over 700 Newton meters of torque.
Wow, I mean, these are huge numbers for a car which you were saying earlier was going to weigh around 1.5 tons, so considerably lighter than the original would have been with 280 odd horsepower, right?
Oh yeah, significantly lighter and significantly more power.
Awesome. I mean, you must have had to do a massive amount of work just to fit this power plant under the bonnet. The packaging pretty tight, I guess?
Yes, we could kind of say it's sort of the smallest big car. The engine bays look huge, but once you put that V12 in there, there is not that much room. So packaging's been a massive struggle and constraint for us.
All right, well played on fitting it down there, because as you've seen, the bonnet does close. All that power's got to go somewhere. So just tell me a little bit about the transmission you've chosen.
Yeah, so transmission is a 6-speed manual, and that's then coupled with a plated limited slip diff at the back.
Okay, good to know we're old school. And speaking of, I'm always kind of interested with restomods from a legal point of view, but also nostalgia. How much of the original car do you have to leave in, and how much have you left underneath this? Is it just an XJS chassis plate?
No, there's a bit more than that still there. We've taken every area of the car as far as we can with development. We've completely reinforced the body shell and chassis structure and all new subframes to our own design. But there's still an XJS underneath.
Yeah, and of course you've got ceramic brakes as an option, which were never on the original. You've got adaptive suspension. I mean, adjustable ABS is pure race car, but all I'm thinking while I'm looking at this is, can we hear it, please?
Yeah, I think we can fire it up.
Khyzyl Saleem, lead designer, is the man responsible for its all-attitude carbon bodywork.
So we've loved your work for the delight of millions on Instagram of these, cyberpunk, ultra cool renderings. But how do you go from creating that to being let loose on your ultimate Jag?
It's a funny story, and it does involve some Instagram direct messaging, particularly from TWR themselves, and also a good friend of mine, Magnus Walker. Some may know him as a previous Porsche ambassador, a designer, and a creative. They just asked, is this something that you think you'd like to work on? To which I responded with, yes. With it being an XJS, I'd been waiting for the right moment, genuinely to design something with an XJS. I've done E-types previously, maybe slightly destroyed them for the sake of just my own personal amusement. But this was a real opportunity to create something special, build a brand new TWR car based off an XJS.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating that for anyone watching who wanted to get into car design and get their ideas out into the world and into carbon fibre, you don't have to necessarily do a traditional off to art school course. You can post your ideas and your inspiration to the world, and you never know who might see it.
Exactly. I see my Instagram page as a digital sketchbook. Everything I create is just me kind of getting ideas out there and hopefully inspiring people. Some love it, some hate it. But I think what's really special about this project, and what I'm most grateful for, is I'm not a traditionally trained designer, which people at home are probably like, yeah, damn right you're not.
And I know buried in this car there are kind of hints of Jaguar's past, other great cars that you wanted to celebrate in the bodywork. Can you just point out a few of the details for us?
I can indeed. Myself, I'm very inspired by the 70s and 80s era of design and modification. Your IMSA, your Trans Am, your Group A touring cars, which speaks to the original TWR XJS Group A race car, but also including original Jaguar design as well. So the XJR9, XJR15, but most importantly, the XJ220 as well, which is quite obvious when you look at the rear of the car and you see the diffuser that we have there. I worked with an ex-F1 Mercedes aerodynamicist to kind of work back and forth on the design of the car itself. So I would create a front splitter design from bumper, the arches, hood, roofline, everything we worked back and forth on to make sure that everything that was being designed also lends itself to the function of the car. So kind of notably rear three-quarter, these cars were known, originally the XJS was known for having a rear flying buttress, but it wasn't a flying buttress. It was filled in. It didn't function. Yeah, it didn't function that way. But we've now made it function in that way. Just very simple, subtle things, so kind of taking the original body lines on the XJS, channeling through. The roof is now channeled as well to kind of channel air through, down through the roof spoiler and over down to the back of the car. And it's kind of just a theme running along the entire car in itself.
Sure. I just don't think it can be a coincidence that right as you borrowed an ex-Mercedes F1 aerodynamicist, their car's not too hot aerodynamically at the moment.
I'm not saying that.
I love what you've been doing on this instead.
Thank you.
And to hear the backstory of how this project came to life, I caught up with John Kane, TWR's co-founder.
So John, what's been your role in the resurrection of TWR and how long have you been working on this project?
So I'm co-founder with Fergus. We've been working on this now for 3 years. Fergus and I met about 7 years ago on a driving tour. He was in a 500 SEL, which had been modified, and I was in a modified Audi R8. Seemed like we were probably good together as a team, and then we started talking. I then found out Fergus was Fergus Walkinshaw of TWR, which I didn't know, and at that point we started talking about projects. What should we do? Should we do something with TWR because it had disappeared? And yeah, that went through the whole process of, well, TWR's involved in this, 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 and this, but most famous kind of Le Mans victory, and then XJS. And XJS seemed like a perfect candidate for what we wanted to do, which was bring some of the TWR kind of ethos and performance enhancing side of that into a next generation, and this is the TWR Supercat.
Absolutely. Now, you said obviously the Le Mans victory is a big inspiration there. That's why there's going to be 88 of these cars. Correct. Because 88 was the Le Mans win. Yep. Obviously that will leave you with a bit of free time when you've finished. I mean, what's the next Jag that could do with the TWR treatment? For me, I want an XJ220 with that engine in.
Yeah, well, you never know, but we're not necessarily just Jag. Remember, TWR had many different affiliations during the years, so we're not limited on that fact, and there's definitely some others in the pipeline, already thought about, already started some design work on. So yeah, keep your ear to the ground.
I mean, yeah, with you masterminding it, with Fergus's engineering, Khyzyl on the design, doing this, you know, kind of crazy Mad Max stuff. Yeah. Sky's the limit, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. That's the whole intent. Yeah, we're building a company to move forwards, and you know, the way we position this, price and number of cars, was to become essentially a small high-end manufacturer of vehicles, and there's a number of avenues we can go down to keep that moving.
All right, best of luck.
Thank you very much.
And though it's inspired by motorsport, TWR has added a dollop of everyday usability. There's Apple CarPlay and Bluetooth, a nose lift system to save that huge front splitter, and thanks to the removal of the original XJS's largely useless back seats, even more boot space.
Now, if they'd made the outside look that outrageous and then just left all the old Jag wood and really naff switches in here, wouldn't have really worked, would it? So this has had a thorough going over, and if, like me, you're a fan of your physical switchgear, you're going to be right at home, because look how they've prioritised this. Down here, your knobs for adjusting the adaptive suspension, the driving modes, and your multi-stage traction control, proper heater controls up here that are beautifully illuminated, and then where they have had to go digital, in this screen right in front of the driver behind the TWR classic steering wheel, they've actually reinterpreted the old XJS dials on the screen rather than just having a kind of bar graph reading out your revs. So yeah, nice little bit of attention to detail there, but then that's everywhere in the beautiful fillets of metal, this belt line going around here, smells very expensive in the upholstery, and of course the centerpiece. It had to have a manual gear lever, but it just feels so tactile and high quality in the hands. And I imagine that once you get Mr. Angry up there warmed up to temperature, then you're going to feel that coming up through the transmission. That's when you'll know it's time to play. The seats, yeah, they're lighter and actually really nicely supportive around your hips than a standard XJS like you've seen over there, but they've just reinterpreted the look in this bridge of weir leather, so it feels appropriate, still feels gentlemanly. It's not all suede and race car, and tons of luggage space, more headroom than the original car as well. So might upset some of the traditionalists, but they'll have fainted when they saw the wheel arches anyway.
Hearing the spec and the story is all well and good, but what you and I really want to know now is whether or not the Supercat is a super drive. So, over to Top Gear's other Ollie for a hoon in the wonderfully freakish looking prototype.
This is fun, I like this! This is a peek behind the curtain of what goes on when you're developing a car. Cars in a really raw state. and it's both thrilling and slightly terrifying as well. So what have we got? Well, manual gearbox, lots of noise, brakes are a little bit soft. We'll just cruise it round for a couple of laps and enjoy the experience, get a feel for it. And now I've never driven an original XJS, but I've got a feeling this one doesn't really feel like an original XJS. It already feels that noise, the rawness of it at the moment. Feels like those old early 80s touring cars at the moment. Oh wow, well listen to it. I mean, it feels pretty trustworthy at the moment, but you know, a lot of power, rear wheel drive. That is an angry, noisy, whole load of hornets under the bonnet. God, that's only up to 4,500 revs. Oh, it's nice to heel and toe. It's really nice. So already you can feel that the primary ride's really good. It's just, it lacks that last bit of sophistication at the moment that it needs to get. There's quite a lot of sort of mechanical feel in the steering, whereas the ride's quite plush. They're going to support it. They're trying out different tyre widths and things at the moment as well, as they get more of a, get the car dialed in a bit more. Yeah, it needs a bit of low down torque. It needs that supercharger to do more low down, I think, because at the moment that's 3,000, not a lot. 4,000 starting to go. Oh yeah, there we go. And listen to it as it dumps everything off. Wait, there we go, slide in a bit already. Oh, there we go, let's let it go, shall we? Yes! I was trying to keep it going straight, but it doesn't seem to want to. It's breaking away really easy. Wow, it's moving around a lot on very little throttle. They'll need to nail that down a bit better. Look, it's never going to be, I don't think, a super fast track car, but I think it's got a hell of a lot of potential for being just one of those slightly retro, just wonderful sort of car you want to see sliding around Goodwood Motor Circuit doing silly angles. It's just making me laugh because it's so unfinished and yet so addictively silly. It's not a car you'd want to drive on the road very hurriedly at the moment, but oh yeah. This is so old school. This just is like, welcome back to the 80s. Have you missed us? Yes, I have.
If you were watching very closely just then, you might have spotted a moment when the Supercat was actually heading in a straight line. We'll be driving the finished version pretty soon, but from the look of the prototype, this is definitely a resto mod that doesn't deserve to just be a garage queen.
So if you ever do find yourself feeling just a little bit jaundiced by this seemingly endless stream of beautifully reimagined Porsche 911s or any other kind of classic, and just remember there's plenty of stuff from yesteryear that wasn't so great first time round that would really benefit from a bit of a wild reinvention.